For people that perhaps you're subscribed to Netflix and Prime Video and you don't want to pay for something like YouTube TV, you're certainly not considering subscribing to a cable package, I think this could potentially reach that audience that they're trying to get. We finally have some new details on the new sports streaming service that's coming from Fox, Disney, and Warner Brothers Discovery. The NFL prepares for a rather confusing season as more games become streaming exclusives, and the Roku Channel gets free live sports. I will cover all of this and more on a sports-focused episode of the Shall I Stream It podcast. Alright, thanks for tuning in everyone to the Shall I Stream It podcast. This is the podcast that keeps you up to date on everything related to television streaming services. As a reminder, this podcast is now available in audio form on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, or wherever you get your audio podcasts. I would highly appreciate if you check it out on whatever podcasting platform you listen to. Give it a download, give it a review. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into our lead story, and that is that we finally have details on the streaming service that was once jokingly referred to as Spoolu or Sports Hulu. Now, here's everything that we know about this new sports streaming service, which is being launched as a joint venture between Disney, Fox, and Warner Brothers Discovery. The first and the biggest key detail is that it will be known as Venu Sports. It is spelled Venu. Now, this, I think it's a pretty good name. It makes you think of a venue, like a stadium, and it sounds like a streaming service. Kind of goes along with names like Hulu or something like that. Along with the announcement of the name, they did also show us the logo, and they've set up a website at venu.com. This doesn't tell us a whole lot, but it does kind of give us a vibe of what some of their marketing might be like. Interesting little detail on the website, when you scroll to the bottom, it has a little disclosure that says not only is this pending regulatory approval, but that the website is operated by Fox. So it sounds like Fox, amongst these three companies, might be the one who is going to be in charge of not only the website, but also the infrastructure of the app. Now, the logo for Venu Sports has an orange color scheme, which is pretty interesting if you consider that a certain other live TV streaming service focused on sports is suing these three companies based on what they say is an anti-competitive practice for them to form the streaming service, and that would, of course, be Fubo. So it seems like there's some shots fired amongst the disputes between the different parties going on in this saga. Now, Venu Sports is still set to launch in the fall of 2024, at least according to the companies. But of course, it is pending the challenges from Fubo, pending the regulatory pressure, and also final agreements still are not in place between the three companies, although they have brought in a new CEO. Now, Venu Sports is set to include everything that is normally on ESPN+, as well as the different live linear channels that are owned by these three companies. With Fox, that would be Fox, FS1, FS2, Disney, ABC, as well as ESPN and the various different ESPN networks, so ESPN2, ESPN News. And with Warner Brothers Discovery, there are three channels that include sports, which are TNT, TBS, and True TV. Altogether, this will include the majority of the major league sports broadcasts in the United States, although not all of them. It does notably not include certain companies like NBC Universal and Paramount. It also won't include regional sports networks, and it won't include the streaming exclusive games that we'll see from, Netflix or Prime Video with the NFL and things like that. There is also one wrinkle with this. Now, this sports streaming service, Venu Sports, will include local broadcasters, or it's supposed to, from ABC and Fox. But as was reported in an article from The Desk, the companies that own the local affiliates could decide not to include their local affiliate stations on Venu Sports if they decide they don't like the terms of the deal with Disney and Fox and Warner Brothers Discovery. This is a pretty common scenario that we see with the companies that own these local broadcast channels when they go to negotiate agreements with not only cable companies, but also streaming services like Fubo or YouTube TV and things like that. It seems like it is a somewhat likely scenario, unfortunately, that some of them could decide, hey, let's not put our ABC stations or Fox stations on the streaming service. So we'll see how that shakes out. A lot of times it is those local broadcasters that end up being the reason why cable packages and live TV streaming services end up being so expensive. It is the fees to carry those local broadcasters that drive up the cost of that television package. Speaking of the cost, we still don't have pricing details just yet for Venu Sports, but industry insiders estimate it could be anywhere from $40 to $50 a month. That would make it less than something like YouTube TV or Hulu Plus Live TV, and on par with something like Sling. Venu Sports is set to be offered on its own or as a bundle with Disney Plus, Hulu, and Max. Now, Warner Brothers Discovery and Disney, as we covered in a previous episode of the Shall I Stream It podcast, they are set to offer a bundle with Disney Plus, Hulu, and Max on its own separately that will launch later this summer as well. Now, the target audience for Venu Sports is set to be cord nevers rather than cord cutters. What do they mean by that? Basically, they're banking on the idea that this isn't going to compete with their pre-existing businesses when it comes to linear television, so cable packages or live TV streaming services like YouTube TV. In an article with Stream TV Insider, Lachlan Murdoch, who is the CEO of Fox and the son of Rupert, has said that they will draw inspiration from a sports streaming service that Fox is also involved with in Australia called Kayo Sports. While I haven't tried Kayo Sports firsthand because I don't live in Australia, according to the article, the navigation is primarily based around individual sports rather than the branding of those sports channels. So it sounds like the experience of this app is going to be very much focused on, here's NBA, here's NFL, here's MLB, rather than here's ABC or ESPN or Fox. Which, if you've used a live TV streaming service like YouTube TV or Fubo, that technically isn't that different than how their home screen is set up. But we'll see how this shakes out once we finally get some images of what their app is going to look like. I think it's interesting. I'm a little bit skeptical of some of the things with this streaming service, but for people that perhaps you're subscribed to Netflix and Prime Video and you don't want to pay for something like YouTube TV, you're certainly not considering subscribing to a cable package, I think this could potentially reach that audience that they're trying to get, those cord nevers, perhaps people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s that like sports but don't want to pay for a more expensive cable package. But at $40 to $50 a month, if it ends up costing that much, that is a big price to pay if you're not getting 100% of the sports that you want to watch. Oh yeah, and there's another big wrinkle with this when it comes to Warner Brothers Discovery, and that is that they could lose a significant portion of their sports broadcast rights. Which brings me to my next story, and that is that Warner Brothers Discovery could lose their rights to NBA games. Now, to put this in perspective, right now the rights to the NBA games are shared between Disney, which of course owns ABC and ESPN, and Warner Brothers Discovery that owns the channels TNT, TBS, and True TV. The current agreement is set to be in place until the end of next season, so the 2024 to 2025 NBA season. But since it's now time to iron out the agreements for future seasons, the NBA is considering, as was reported by CNBC, a framework that will renew their agreement with Disney, bring in a new third partner, which is most likely going to be Amazon, and then sell its remaining package to either Warner Brothers Discovery or, it's looking like it was most likely, to NBC Universal. Now, to put this in further perspective, right now, Warner Brothers Discovery, over the past couple of years, they consolidated between Warner Media and Discovery Networks under CEO David Zaslav. The company has been tightening its belt and restricting its spending. They don't necessarily have deep pockets when it comes to the amount of money they can commit to spend on things going ahead for the future with these very expensive contracts. Meanwhile, NBC Universal, which is owned by Comcast, has much deeper pockets, and it's looking like they could be the ones who end up signing a deal if the NBA tries to get a lot more money out of them. And it sounds like that is very much what the NBA wants to do. So right now, Warner Brothers Discovery has been paying $1.2 billion per year to have the NBA rights. With their new agreement, it's looking like the NBA wants to double that. And also, Warner Brothers Discovery would be getting fewer games since there's going to be a third partner, most likely Amazon, thrown into the mix. So if Warner Brothers Discovery decides, hey, we can afford to, continue this contract, that means the NBA games, which are currently on TNT, True TV, and TBS, they will lose those games. They will also not have those NBA games on this new Venu Sports app. However, the ones that will be on ABC and ESPN will remain on that app going ahead for the future, and at least everything will be on it on the 2024 to 2025 season. It's just going to be the season after that. This is poor timing, though, as this streaming service is set to launch and Warner Brothers Discovery is set to be a 1/3 partner in this new venture. Now, it was reported also by CNBC, which I should note is coming from an outlet which is also owned by Comcast, that even though it's going to be a potential big blow for this new streaming app, there are no plans amongst the three companies to shut it down. They're still going to move forward. Now, if Warner Brothers Discovery ends up losing the rights to the NBA games, they will still retain the rights to their other, properties they've got going on. So they have MLB games, they have NHL games, they have college basketball, and they could use the money that they saved from not doing this deal with the NBA to get rights to other additional sports broadcasts like UFC or additional rights to more MLB games. So it is poor timing. We'll see how this shakes out, and it could end up being another complicated blow to the Venu Sports app. But speaking of complications in the world of sports streaming, let's talk about the new NFL season. Now, this past week, we did get the full NFL schedule. Alongside that, we got the announcement that Netflix will be airing 2 exclusive games in 2024 on Christmas Day. They're also set to air an exclusive game in 2025 and at least one in 2026 as well. So what does this mean for the upcoming NFL season, which will start up in the fall? So let's break down all of the different places which the games from the upcoming season will be on and how much it will cost if you want to be able to access every NFL game. Now, Joe Flint, who's a journalist with the Wall Street Journal, he tweeted out a breakdown of where you can find all of these different games. You've got most of them on CBS and Fox. You've got a smaller portion on the outlets owned by Disney, ESPN, and ABC. Smaller portion also on NBC, with one game on Peacock as a Peacock exclusive. You've got some games on Amazon with Thursday Night Football and Black Friday. He didn't mention this, but there's also a playoff wildcard game that they'll have. You have 7 games that are NFL Network exclusives, and now you've got 2 games that are Netflix exclusives. All of that together, you also have to factor in that if you want to watch out-of-market games on Sundays, you will need NFL Sunday Ticket, just as you did last season. Now, the people who are going to need to spend the least amount of money are people who perhaps only want to watch their hometown team, and they live in the market for that area. So for example, I live in the Kansas City area. If I decide, hey, I only want to watch Kansas City Chiefs games, I can watch all of those games on my local broadcasters, even if they are technically Thursday Night Football, Prime Video exclusives, or Peacock exclusives. They will also be on my local broadcasters in the in-market area. It's when you want to watch those out-of-market games for the football teams that aren't in your city that things get a little bit more complicated. So to break down the math of this, if you were to get Prime Video, which costs $8.99 a month, which yes, you can do on its own without a regular Prime subscription, if you were to get that from September through January, that would cost $44.95. You were to get 1 month of Peacock, so you could watch the Peacock exclusive game in September. That would be $7.99. You were to get 1 month of Netflix to watch the Christmas Day games. That would be $6.99 for their cheapest plan. And if you wanted access to the NFL Network, the cheapest way to do that would be with NFL Plus, which actually does let you watch the NFL Network games, at least on a TV. 3 months of NFL Plus for October, November, and December would be $20.97. And finally, here's the doozy. To watch out-of-market Sunday games, you would need NFL Sunday Ticket. If you don't subscribe to YouTube TV, it's $449 per year. If you do subscribe to YouTube TV, it's $349 a year. So if you watched your local broadcasters over the air with an antenna for free and paid for all of that extra stuff so you could watch the out-of-market games, that would mean the bare minimum you could spend to watch every game across the entire season would be $529.90. Now, if you didn't want to mess with an antenna and you decided to go with YouTube TV, that means you'll spend $392.94 for 6 months of their service. That's factoring in the discount you get for the first 3 months. plus $349 for NFL Sunday Ticket, plus the additional fees for Netflix, Peacock, and Prime Video. It would be a grand total of $801.87 for the entire season. And technically, there's a third option to get the entire season's worth of games from the NFL. That is with NFL Plus. You can get an entire year of NFL Plus for $50 a year. And while it lets you watch the NFL Network games on your TV, anything that's not on the NFL Network, so your local broadcasters and all of that, for some reason with NFL Plus, you can only watch them on a mobile device and you can't cast it to a TV. But I suspect most people are going to make something of a compromise. You might decide, hey, I just want to watch the in-market games, or maybe I'll get access to some of the out-of-market games from Netflix or Prime Video or something like that, but I'm not going to pay for NFL Sunday Ticket. I'll just wait for the highlights to come out and keep up with it that way. Either way, it's hard to shake that this isn't a very confusing situation, as there's no one central place you can go and just watch them all in one area, even if you were to get YouTube TV and NFL Sunday Ticket. But let's get to our final story, which is some good news, and that is that you can now watch MLB games for free on the Roku Channel. Now, Roku recently struck a deal with the MLB for the Sunday leadoff live games, which were previously on Peacock. These are the first MLB games of the day to air on Sundays. At the time I'm recording this, on May 19th, this was actually the first day that these aired on the Roku Channel. They will continue up until September 15th. Again, you can watch them for free on the Roku Channel, so if you have a Roku TV or a Roku device, it is built in. Otherwise, you can download the Roku Channel, although for some reason they don't offer an Apple TV app. They've also launched an MLB Zone hub that will include highlights, recaps, and other MLB related content through the Roku Channel. And I should note that these do include worldwide rights, so even if you don't live in the United States, Roku plans to also air these live in other countries on the Roku Channel, such as Canada and Mexico. But that does it for this week's episode of the Shall I Stream It podcast. What do you think about the changes to the world of sports and streaming? Let me know in the comment section. If you like the work that I do with Shall I Stream It and want to support this, consider becoming a Shall I supporter on Patreon. Through Patreon, you can vote on future video ideas, get a video shout out in certain videos, and interact with a community of other Shall I supporters to discuss all things movies, TV, and streaming. I just launched it this past month. I'm very excited to have a core group of people who have jumped on board from the start. So if you want to help grow this out even more, you can go to patreon.com/Shall I supporters. I've got exclusive videos on there where I talk about things like VPNs and my unhinged advice for cord cutting. So definitely check that out on Patreon. But even if you don't join the Patreon, I much appreciate you liking and sharing and commenting on all of my content. So thanks again for everyone for supporting this YouTube channel and this podcast. I have now reached over 3 million lifetime views on the Shall I Stream It YouTube channel. So thankful for the continued support of everyone who has stayed engaged with Shall I Stream It. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone, and I will see you next week.